Hello, Opophiles! Today we're talking about Ferling etude number 42 from the collection of 48 etudes. This is the fast one in D flat major. This key is tough, so you're going to want to revisit some of these technique and scale books. Obviously practice all your scales every day, but you're going to want to live in D flat major for a little bit just to make sure that you're using all your pinky keys correctly and that everything is working for you. There's a couple things that can help you get this etude a little more fluid, but I want to give you a warning first. The tempo marking is marked at quarter note equals, dotted half note equals 96, which is super fast. That would be like this. So our subdivisions, that's the quarter note, and then our eighth notes, it's just really fast. So I can maybe play 3 bars at a time at this tempo, but I can't play the whole etude at this tempo. So I've played it at a much slower tempo, and I encourage you to pick a tempo where it's manageable for you to play it cleanly without falling all over yourselves with these super high notes and arpeggios and the alternate fingerings that you're going to have to learn for this etude. The biggest alternate fingering issue, which I'm sure if you've been working this etude for some time you've come across, is in measure 56. Now I'm going to show you some close-ups with my hands on the 2 solutions that you can use around this F puzzle. I have a video discussing the appropriate F fingerings to use, or at least an article on opophiles.com. That's right. I don't think I made a video for that yet, but I think I should. Let me know in the comments below what you think, if you need a whole video for that, but I'd be happy to make it. But I really believe in using the best F fingering for technical facility. The forked Fs on any oboe made in the last 5 years, like professional oboe anyway, are really good. Like they have engineered their way past forked F being a bad note. So if you are avoiding forked F at all costs, maybe you shouldn't. And I think it can really match a color palette across wide ranges now. The only exception I think might be in really slow lyrical solos, but even then, a lot of times you can get away with it now with a modern instrument. So in measure 56, we have this weird situation where you're playing E natural, F, E flat, and D flat. And there are 2 solutions, and I don't think either of them should be rejected, but you should pick the one that's right for you, and based on your anatomy, because some people's fingers are longer or stronger, whatever you decide, you need to commit to it when you're learning the etude. That's the only thing. Okay, so the first solution is to use left hand F, and that will look like this. And the second solution is to use forked F, and that look like this. Now, if you're using the first version, where you're going to use left hand F, you may have noticed that you have to slide with your right hand pinky. And if you're going to use that, you have to stay light on your fingers, like don't squeeze so hard, and you have to have the strength in the, I guess it's the carpal area, to move up and down with the pinky. If you're using the forked F, it's way easier because you can use left hand E flat to go to right hand D flat. So that's great. The only issue is getting it clean as you do this little forked swap. And that's kind of a vestige of Baroque oboe days. So it can be done. People used to do it all the time. We're just maybe not as in practice for that switch on the modern instrument. So the next issue with this etude comes in the 3rd bar right away, and it's this super high F. Now I recommend practicing the rolling arpeggios, and I have a link to a video on that technical exercise in the description below. Definitely practice this and live in D flat major, D flat arpeggios, D flat scales, so that you can be facile with this etude. But the fingering that's going to make your life a whole lot easier is this high note fingering here, high F. And that would be half full 2, side A flat key on the right side, and the 3rd octave key, or 1st octave key if you don't have one. Both of them will work. If you need to learn the other high note fingerings, like high C and above, I have a whole video just going over those fingerings and their alternatives, and that's also in the description. So once you know that fingering, or once you're kind of learning that fingering, practice it slow so that you're not squeezing the oboe as you learn it. Because if you build in the habit of relaxed playing early, you're going to be way better off later down the road. until it just becomes second nature to use that short F fingering. The last tip for this etude, because there are lots of cool compositional techniques, but the last technical tip is to avoid squeezing the instrument. If you can find a way to play your scales, the etude, arpeggios in a way where you're not grabbing onto the keys, you're going to be way better off. And this etude really reveals the bad habits I had coming into it and am still working on as far as squeezing, because when you're playing in this key and with the crazy hemiolas that they have you do in this etude, it's just really hard to stay relaxed and chill. And if you can figure out how to do that, that's the way to go. Something that helped practice that is just to play like one measure of the etude at a time. I'm going to pick, let's pick measure 17, which is the beginning of the second phrase. And remember, this is piano. And I'm just going to go unrecognizably slow, and on every single note, I'm checking to see how much pressure am I actually applying to the instrument. Now, if you're kind of a smaller player like I am, it takes a lot of, strength just to hold the instrument up on the thumb. It's like 2.5 pounds of instrument, and you're already using a lot of muscle here. But you have to separate these muscles, and awareness is key. Sometimes just sitting there thinking about it is going to be more effective than hacking through this at a tempo where you can't do this kind of mental work. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about, which is not a technical issue, but is a really cool compositional technique, is in the ends of the phrases. Each time he kind of makes the hemiola more and more dramatic, let's say. So by the third phrase, which is the second to last phrase, you have this really cool where he goes into 2, and that's a really common hemiola thing. But then in the last phrase, he puts you in straight up 2/4 instead of like 1/4, or like earlier. So you're in 2/4, but you're starting the 2/4 on an upbeat. So you're kind of nested, syncopated. And that's a really cool technique to kind of develop the syncopation in such a short little piece. The etude's like a minute long, but in that minute, he managed to develop an idea. Whether you're learning this etude for your own oboe education or to audition for Region Band or All-State, I wish you guys luck. For the state of Texas, I will be doing some Region Band masterclasses on Zoom later this fall. If you'd like to sign up for that, there is a link in the description below. And of course, you can always check out some free oboe resources on oboefiles.com or just hang out with the oboe community. If you need reads, I sell reads there as well. The year that this etude is on the Texas All-State list is 2020, and there's some crazy stuff happening in the world right now. So I hope you guys stay mindful about your own health and the way that you interact with people around you. Always be kind, and when in doubt, play beautifully.